Hi again. Let's talk about Trish today. She's a client who started Googling divorce and learned all kinds of things online about what to expect. Then she joined a Facebook private group and there was so much chatter there too. She made some new friends and one of them told her that she should expect to get 70% of her husband's income because he cheated on her. Someone else told her that because he was at fault for the breakdown of the marriage, that he would only be able to see the kids on weekends and maybe one dinner visit a week. Then she spoke with a friend whose coworker went through a divorce, and her friend told her she should ask for 1/2 of her husband's pension because he had been employed with the union for 18 years, even though Trish has only been married for 7 years, and she is still entitled to half. Trish then calls her lawyer and says, hey, I want 70% of my husband's income and half of his premarital retirement, and he can only see the kids every other weekend, and I won't agree to anything else. Now, her lawyer has to be the bad person and tell her that her demands are unreasonable. Her lawyer must tell her that her expectations are not in line with what can reasonably be expected to come out of a court. But she doesn't want to hear this. Instead, Trish digs in deeper and says, I want to ask for this anyway. So her lawyer sends a letter to the other lawyer and they respond with an emphatic, take a hike. Trish says, let's go to court then because this is what I want and I have friends and family and Mr. Google who all told me I am entitled to all of this. You are my lawyer and your job is to get me everything I want. She and her lawyer spend the coming months preparing for trial. They line up witnesses, take depositions, and prepare an extensive exhibit list. Trish pays thousands of dollars to fight for what she is so certain she should get. Her lawyer might encourage her to rethink her demands, but she won't have it. She offers an extra dinner visit a few days before the trial is scheduled to start, but she won't bend on anything else. And when her spouse says, no thanks, she yells that he's the unreasonable one. The trial proceeds and Trish expects a quick decision, but that's not how it works either. They wait 2 months and during that time, there's so much angst and conflict between Trish and her husband because they are still living together and things are less than ideal in the home. The kids are witnessing arguments. No one can move out until they both know what their income situations will look like after the judge's decision. And so the decision finally comes and it's nothing what Trish wanted or expected. This should have been the end of her divorce, but instead it's just the start of more conflict. Trish's fatal flaw was that she had expectations that could never be satisfied. An expectation feeds frustration. There is no one, not Trish, not you, not any of my clients who will end up happy with the end result if they start with unreasonable expectations. So today we are talking about how you can get out of your own way. To do that, let's talk about what goes into dividing your marital estate. The partition puzzle shows you all of the pieces that need to fit into your agreement. Or if you go to trial, it's all of the parts that a judge will need to make a decision about your marital estate. Now keep in mind, we're not talking about parenting here. That's another topic for another day. Income, debt, your assets all need to be examined from a global perspective. That means all of the pieces need to fit together into a complete package. While a judge will deal with each of them individually, it all needs to go together into one large, cohesive, complete picture, just like a puzzle. So for example, let's say Trish's husband made $100,000 and Trish made half of that. During their marriage, they liked to vacation and often charged those vacations on their credit cards and never paid the balance off. At the time of their divorce, their credit card debt grew to a whopping $35,000. It's going to be impossible to have a discussion about alimony if we also don't consider who's paying the debt. While income, debt, and assets are an important role in the overall conversation, the final piece that brings it all together and makes the picture whole is whether your agreement is fair. No matter which state you're in, on some level, the judge who grants the divorce must decide that your agreement is fair. If your agreement isn't fair, it will not be accepted. So what's fair? Well, the Webster Dictionary defines fair as this: sufficient but not ample. Sufficient but not ample, this is the opposite of what most people want from a divorce. They don't want sufficient. They want ample assets and ample income and ample results and ample pain and suffering for their soon-to-be ex. For most, sufficient is inadequate even if it's fair. So how do you evaluate fairness in divorce when every emotion is heightened? How do you evaluate reasonableness when your sense of just and fair is skewed? You perform a test, that's how. The fairness test is a two-step analysis to help you determine whether what you are asking for is fair and equitable. The first prong is the common sense question, and the second prong is the reverse question. So much of what happens during a divorce has little to do with the law and everything to do with emotions and anger. Those emotions can drive conflict. It can also set you up with unreasonable expectations. Your lawyer is going to offer their legal advice, but at the end of the day, you're the one who has to sign the agreement, and if you tell your lawyer you want to go to trial, you'll be going to trial. Your lawyer can't guarantee what will happen in court, but they can predict a range of outcomes. Asking your lawyer for a range is a good conversation to have, but often your expectations start solidifying long before you hire an attorney. It's the result of the internet and friends and family offering well-meaning but incorrect advice. So let's put the fairness test to work in Trish's case, starting with the common sense prong. So Trish wants 70% of her husband's salary. That's $70,000. And if she makes $50,000 and her husband pays her $70,000, that means she'll end up with $120,000 to live off each year. And her husband will have $30,000. You don't need a legal education to know that this scenario doesn't pass the common sense fairness prong. Now, I know you might say it's fair that he is left with nothing, but that's your emotion talking. Emotion only gets you a high legal bill and a dissatisfied ending. Your common sense tells you that your husband won't be able to afford an apartment and afford to pay his share of the credit card debt and pay for food and utilities and leave anything left over for discretionary spending that we all have, like haircuts and occasional lunch out. Still not convinced? Is there still a part of you that says, well, he cheated and he should be living in a studio apartment and he shouldn't have access to any small pleasures in life like a vacation? Okay, so if you're still not convinced, let's move on to the second prong of the test, the reverse question. Let's flip this scenario around. If it was reversed, would Trish find it to be fair to her? Would it be fair if Trish had $30,000 and her husband had $120,000 to live off of? Of course not. This example fails both prongs, which is a pretty good indicator that Trish's expectations are unrealistic. It's a good indicator that she is making demands from an emotional place rather than from a rational and reasonable place. As you put together what you want, you can run them through the fairness test. If they pass both prongs, chances are your request is reasonable. If your spouse refuses your offer, this might be a good point to dig into a little. This might be something you litigate. Usually, if your request fails one of the prongs, it will likely fail the other two. The only reason why you would pass one prong and fail the other is because your emotion is taking center stage to your reason. This sounds like, he doesn't deserve to see the kids that much. He should live less comfortably than me because he's a jerk. He should have to pay for everything. You can hear the emotion in those sentences. Can you see how reason has been removed? Of course, if your spouse counters you with a different offer, run his proposal through the same test. Maybe his offer isn't unreasonable either, but just different. Maybe this is a place where you can come to the table to negotiate. So had Trish gone through this exercise, she may have realized that what she was asking for simply was not fair. And if she realized this before she plunged into conflict and litigation, she could have saved thousands of dollars. But instead, Trish ended the divorce feeling like she got screwed, even though the end result was exactly within the range of what can be reasonably expected. And because she felt like she didn't win, the conflict will carry into her future, and she will likely go back to court countless times attempting to modify and further litigate. Because she is unhappy with the result, she will find it nearly impossible to move forward into a new, hopeful future because she will spend all of her emotional energy holding on to the past. To sum this lesson up, run the fairness test through whatever your ask is. You can use this exercise for anything your spouse proposes as well. Just because his offer might be different, it doesn't automatically make it bad. This test will allow you to impartially review all proposals. Trish's journey is a cautionary tale to set reasonable expectations early on. Her story does not have to be yours, because peace begins when expectation ends. Thanks for listening, and see you back here soon.